we will stop immigration. We will close the borders and send the people back, first of all.
Is that legal migrants as well, or is that just asylum seekers?
Islamic radicals really try to establish another system here in Europe. And they want to establish another system. And that's what we say. The radical Islam isn't a part of Germany, of course. And really, there we have to observe, and they should be maybe observed by our Secret Service, but not my party. And we have really to bring the EU back to the 90s, to the 80s, when we had a good cooperation, a common market, cooperate. And maybe we should talk about how to defend Europe. And if this will fail to make a reform in this EEC or EU, we have to leave and to start a new project simultaneously with nations of same thinking and acting like Austria. No.
If France doesn't get it together, do you think that they could basically drag down the whole euro?
Yeah.
Sounds like you want to get rid of any currency union with France.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's true, because it's failed.
Germany might be about to end Europe's immigration chaos for good. In the last week or so, I've reported that Sharia law is now valid in Austria. An American hero has been attacked defending women from migrants in Germany. A Swiss politician was beaten by a mob from migrant background.
Did your hand cut as well? Was that, I thought you had lumps of flesh hanging off your hand. Yeah. Why are people such cowards?
A Brit was petrol bombed while hanging this St George's cross.
What do you think about this, mate?
No comment.
No comment? It's a bit weird, isn't it? Huh?
We're impartial.
Impartial? He's just been petrol bombed.
Yeah, well, we're just here to deal with whatever's in front of us.
And passengers fled a Milan airport terminal as a migrant smashed up a check-in desk before setting it alight. The consequences of open borders can be seen all over Europe, and the people of our continent are furious. It's not just Britain where a new party has risen to the top of the polls. The Alternative for Germany has overtaken the Conservatives to become #1 among Germans, just 100 days into the current Chancellor Mertz's term. This is despite his promises of a spending splurge and a crackdown on immigration, indicating trust has totally broken down. They're adamant with their policies, a complete end to all immigration, at least temporarily. They say Islam has nothing to do with German culture, and they want expressions of religion banned in public. They want to normalise relations with Russia to save Germany's manufacturing base. Reform of the euro with painful cuts in spendthrift countries, or they'll dissolve the whole single currency to set up a new one without the Southern Europeans. They'd effectively boot France out. They like Brexit and they want to court Britain. Kay Gottschalk, a co-founder of the party and now the AfD's finance spokesperson, sat down with me, saying he's shocked at how Britain, the country he knew as a bastion of freedom, is clamping down now on freedom of speech under Keir Starmer. How he thinks the German state is being weaponised against his party, and how they'll end immigration to Germany and reform or possibly leave the EU, which would spell the end for the superstate dream. I'm Nick Dunning, and this is GB News Originals. Friedrich Mertz, he's been in office around 100 days. He's already tanked in popularity. The AfD is in some polls coming out on top. Why, he's talking about cracking down on immigration, unleashing this huge amount of debt borrowing to improve the German economy and invest in infrastructure. So why are the German people not supporting him?
I think right now most of the people in Germany recognize that a lot of these so-called old politicians just talking, they are brilliant by announcement, but by acting they mostly in the past tense failed. So people recognize, I think one of the great things he would or wanted to do is in summertime everybody will feel it's going and it will go better in Germany again. And nobody is feeling it's going better here in Germany. He promised to reduce the electricity prices, the energy prices for all walks of life, not only for big companies, but also this promise is already broken after 100 days. And of course, a lot of different other different things, migration, for example, the great immigration here in Germany, the problem isn't solved at all. Still, we just celebrate when we sent back 100 people from Afghanistan or other countries, from Syria, back to their countries. And the people feel, the people see, it was again a lie. And the biggest thing, I think, was he promised not to raise the financial budget, not to bring up to new debts. We did, indeed, after the election. And with the old parliament, he did this majority and became from this so-called a liar or something like that. And I think that's the reason. And of course, a lot of people think right now the CDU should try to cooperate and work with our party. So a lot of reasons, but all of these reasons alone could, for me, okay to say, yeah, he is unpopular because he lied to the people. He broke already after a few days so many promises he had given during the campaigning, the election campaign. So that's the reason for it, I think.
Interesting. And when you mention immigration, what's the picture in Germany at the moment? I mean, we're focused heavily on immigration in the UK. It's something that GB News covers heavily. I think the image many Brits will have of immigration in Germany as maybe frozen with the time of Angela Merkel. So if you could let us know a little bit about sort of the scale of it and the problems that you're having.
Yes, it's also very interesting when we talk today about the problem. Yesterday, they celebrated the 10th day when Ms. Merkel said, "Wir schaffen das, so we will cope with the problem," if I translate it. And we failed with the problem. Right now, I would say we have a situation in Germany that can be described, it's going on like the last 10 years. We have still a large amount of people being illegal here in Germany. We still can't solve the problem how to send them back. The European countries are failing to find a so-called European solution to meet this challenge. They failed also. I mean, Italy started and tried in the spring and summertime to establish a, let me say, center on the balcony. The European courts, the High Court said, no, it's illegal. You can't do that. They must, you must let them into the EEC. And everybody is knowing they are just going to Italy and then they cross the border and are coming to Germany, the paradise for everybody here because of our social welfare system. So nothing is still changed. A number of 250,000 people each year are coming to Germany. That causes so many problems, financial problems, housing problems. The apartment prices in Germany are so high for young people they can't afford. They have to stay in the homes of their parents and can't establish own families. It's so many problems. Maybe we can talk about this later. But really, the immigration problem isn't solved. It's still going on. Yesterday, we had an incident in Dresden when an American citizen tried to help girls being threatened by so-called Syrian people from Syria, and he was injured badly in the face by a knife. And so also, we have each day we have such thing. And it's the same like in Great Britain I heard about when I talked to British journalists. You have something like a ban on special things that should be mentioned or quoted if you talk about immigration. And in Germany, we have got the public broadcasting system here, and it's still denying the facts, the problems, still banning our party. We are banned by so many institutions here in Germany. So really, we have a lack of freedom of speech. Mm-hmm. And we have a lack of a fair discussion about the problems we have here in Germany.
Because what I was going to ask you about is how German intelligence has designated the AfD extremist, and I wanted to know what is extremist about your platform? What is it that you want to do that the state feels is a threat?
Yes, first of all, after the Second World War, we had something like a re-education. So it's already, I just remember when we had a wonderful World Championship in 2006 here in Germany, and the people went out and waving flags of Germany. The left party said, "Oh, it's a comeback of nationalism, and that's dangerous what the people are doing." Especially the Western people in Germany and the left people still have a problem with our nation, with being to maybe say we are proud on the German history. Of course, we had 12 awful years in our history. Everybody is knowing about that. But we also can talk about so many great things we had during the last 500, 600 years. But really, that's a problem for them. Each thing is always under suspicious minds, suspicious looks like, oh, the nationalism is coming back. So we are threatening that Germany must face its interests. We must really think sometimes now first to German problems, to German people, to our German economy. And that's also for them a sort or a kind of nationalism. And that's the first thing. And the second thing is very brilliant what you said. Of course, we are coming up like a new party and we steal jobs and power and money from the old parties, get used to the system. Some people also say maybe the old parties had taken over the whole system, because in each position, also in our High Court, are CDU and SPD members, but they are represented in a stronger way than they should when you compare it with the results and the real seats in the parliament. So it's old-fashioned, and maybe we need something like in establishing a kind of new democracy. Yeah, we must abandon our public broadcasting system. It's also dominated by SPD and CDU. So we haven't, indeed, I have to say that very clearly, no democracy anymore in Germany. So some things to discuss about are strictly forbidden. And when you look to the parliament, we, I think a few months ago, when we had our national anthem, and the left party even didn't sing with us the national anthem.
They didn't sing their own national anthem?
Yeah.
Did they give a reason?
I think that's a good symbol and characterizing the situation here in Germany very well.
Did they give a reason as why they didn't want to sing the national anthem?
I think most of the left people are in admiration and admires the idea of the EEC, the common market. And it was for a lot of people a thing to abandon German history, to get rid of the history, not to discuss it, and instead becoming and be German, they say, well, we are Europeans. And in that way, anything you do here against the EEC, against Europe, we are not against Europe, of course. We are against this system called EEC and European Union. And yeah, it's a hostile view at you when you criticize, or we want to abandon, or maybe also leave if we can't make a big reform of the whole system. And then you are an enemy for them.
It's starting to sound a little bit like there's parallels. I mean, our listeners who watch this later will see a bit of a parallel with what's going on in the UK. We've had a lot of scandal recently about the state of free speech in our country. We've seen a mother just released, actually. She went to prison she was sentenced for 31 months, but she's got out a lot earlier than that, for a tweet that she made during the riots last year. I don't know if you've heard of that case, but I'm wondering, have you got similar free speech crackdown in Germany? Are people facing criminal charges for things that they say that the establishment doesn't like?
We still have in our law books a point that means if you criticize politicians, you can send to jail or you can be prosecuted. And we had that when somebody said about the former Minister of Economy, Robert Habeck. He's so-called Schwachkopf. I don't know the English expression, so it means something like idiot. But in a friendly way. Schwachkopf means he's not so well-brained and not so well-educated in something. So they call him Schwachkopf in social media. And really, the police invaded the apartment and he was arrested because criticizing a politician. The same you can observe in social media. Germany is always the best when we have to transform European laws into German laws. And we always try then to transform them stronger, tougher than the recommendation maybe from the EU is. So we have always here very strict prosecution in Facebook. Sometimes people, also my party already was blocked on YouTube or X. It changed when Musk bought X. So we are very thankful to that because now we have the freedom of speech. We can discuss. And what happened here in Germany, the left people like Habeck and other parties left the platform X and moved to another platform where we can discuss or say maybe we criticize some standards. So it's really the same situation. It's enormous when you look to the talk shows in Germany. Even the FDP is better represented not being in the parliament anymore than my party. I mean, if you compare it, we had something like statistics in June, 50 or 60 visitors, one from the AfD, one from FDP, two from the left, of course, a lot from the Greens, much more from SPD, and the largest number, of course, CDU and CSU. And we, as the strongest or second strongest party, are not represented on the public broadcasting system. So we just have the channels on social media platforms, and this should also be shrinked. Like people under 16 or 17 shouldn't have access anymore to special social media platforms. Yeah, if we talk about that 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I would have talked to you and said, no, it would never happen in Germany. We learned our lesson from history. But now the socialists, really the lefties, are fearing to lose power here because, indeed, when you look at history, since the 70s, the influence of left parties, left organizations, NGOs, all that stuff are so increased so much, and they now defend their position. They want to avoid that history is now coming back to the conservative side, and they fight with each method. For me, also with illegal methods. It's awful here in Germany.
So it sounds like you're saying there's a lot of the establishment that are against you. Say you are able to overcome that, and one day you're able to sweep to power. What's the vision, the AfD's vision of what you'd like to do in Germany? What would you do with immigration? What would you do with the EU? What would you do with the euro?
First of all, I will try in order. You mentioned we will stop immigration. We will close the borders and send the people back. First of all,
is that legal migrants as well, or is that just asylum seekers?
First of all, we close the borders. The borders must be controlled again, and then we can maybe talk about real migration concern. If we compare with the Canadian system or the Australian system, I don't know. But right now, first thing is we must stop this mass immigration we have each day, each month, each year. We have to stop that. And then we have to send people back cannot being here, not allowed anymore. Even in my borough, 800 illegal people, they have to leave the country, are still here. And we spend here in my borough a amount of more than 10 million euros just for them. It's just in my little borough here. So that's the first thing. Of course, I think you ask about the EEC or the EU. I think the greater number of members in my party think we should try to really reform this EU. I mean, we don't need Strasbourg and Brussels. We have Strasbourg or Brussels, not both. And then we have to stop really a lot of things when Brussels is governing here in Germany or in France. So really stop bureaucratism. Stop also this spending this mass amount of money for projects not working and concentrating, for example, of projects like Airbus. That worked very well. It's a cooperation between Great Britain, France, Spain, Italy, Germany and Portugal, I guess, and it worked very well. So like our spaceship, an European Space Agency, everything here is working very well. So we have some projects working. And we have really to bring the EU back to the 90s, to the 80s, when we had a good cooperation, a common market, cooperate. And maybe we should talk about how to defend Europe, to become, again, a voice in the international concert, because we need American, US protection. And I think that's ridiculous that Europe isn't able to defend and also maybe to stress own interest in the backyard. Ukraine is a backyard of Europe, not of the United States or something like that. Also Syria or Northern Africa. So I think that could be also a project. And if this will fail to make a reform in this EEC or EU, we have to leave and to start a new project simultaneously with nations of same thinking and acting, like Austria, like Netherlands, like Denmark, like Sweden, like Finland. Also, I would really appreciate to have Great Britain back in this concert then. And then we can see if other nations will join again. But first of all, let's try to start a process
of
transforming this.
Does that mean excluding the southern Europeans then?
It depends to them. I mean, Maggie Thatcher said and expressed that very well. The EEC will fail when the Germans are not paying the whole system anymore. And when you left a few years ago, an amount of 11 billion euros are not in the budget anymore. And what said Germany? Okay, we pay the contributions of Great Britain when they are leaving. When you're left the EEC. So we can't really finance the whole system anymore, and we don't like to finance it anymore. And the third question was about the euro. It's the same for me. I mean, the euro is failed. If you compare it to the currency of franc of Switzerland, we lost more than a quarter of value in the last 20 years. So an investor which had invested in Schweizer Franken is a winner, because he has an enormous gain of more than 25%. So what we are doing here is the same. I would suggest to leave the euro really immediately, to start a project then also with Austria, the Netherlands. And when I talked to politicians like Herbert Kickl from the FPÖ and other leaders said, okay, we would join. Netherlands would join. They had a strong currency in the past tense. Also, Austria had a very strong currency, and I think some other countries also would join this project. So I think we have a lot of things, and then it would be better.
Sounds like you want to get rid of any currency union with France.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's true, because it's failed. It's now a nightmare. France is with a failed. I think they had a budget deficit about 116% allowed us 60% by Maastricht. We never had a trial against them or a deficit trial, what is also suggested in the Maastricht treaties. And same with Italy, 144%. I mean, we can talk about Greece. We can talk about all that. It didn't work in the past tense, and it won't work because the mentality is totally different in that point. And why should we risk to jeopardize our friendship or to have trouble of things that can't be changed? I mean, if you like Liverpool in football and I, for example, like Manchester, we will never agree on that maybe. But we mustn't then have trouble about that. And we said, okay, go your way with Liverpool and I go my way with Manchester, for example. And the same in currency and economy. France has and had another style in coping with problems in economy. And the last 25 years was a big problem for German economy. I told you about the value of the concerning euro to Swiss franc, and that's a problem we face indeed. And I really hope the other nations will come to the same results or the same solution. The euro failed completely.
Yeah, and so you've got these very big, very bold ideas about what you would do with your relationship with Europe, and as you say, the whole of the European continent is kind of dependent on Germany and its money. How is the AfD received in Brussels?
Right now, we are with I think we are the far right, to say that, far right side. But I really hope indeed that we can also come in contact again with the party of Marine Le Pen and with the FPÖ. We still are in contact, of course, with FPÖ, but we are not in a working, not in a structure together in Europe. But the contacts are very, very good. I mean, we've been invited in Budapest for the in June for the CPAC. It was also very interesting to talk. We are now pretty close to other European parties. So I think in the next period, there is a great chance again to cooperate. And of course, realistic is that Germany is with more than 40 billion financing the greatest budget position in the whole household of the budget of the EEC. So indeed, they had to talk. We have to talk, and I think we the most goals and things we want to realize in Germany and in Europe and in France are the same. And I think in the future it should work again better.
So I'm just thinking about how it would play out. I mean, obviously the UK for years tried to hold back some of the integration, tried to make the case for more of a free market, tried to walk back some of this stuff, and was never really successful with any of it. And we were a net contributor to the EU budget. It seems to me a little bit like, and you'll know more than this from me, but as an outsider, it seems to the British that somehow, even though France is by many viewed as an economic basket case, it somehow is really able to manipulate the European bureaucracy to its own interests. And even a country as powerful as Germany within the EU, are you confident that the European institutions would work with you to do any reform, or do you think that the French would try some dirty tricks?
The last thing you mentioned is what I expect, of course. Also, we could observe and notice that during the last periods and last 10 or 15 years. But the fact is, then we said, if it would be blocked or some dirty tricks or dirty things that are happening in the backyard or in the background, we must then say, okay, we leave. Finally, then, if you really want to change nothing at all, we will leave. That's the consequence then. We really don't like that because we could also observe some bad influence and repercussions for the British economy, especially the labor force-driven inflation in your country after leaving the EEC. So, as we could observe, there are also a lot of advantages of a common market, but not of common bureaucracy, not of common, really ridiculous projects like the airport in Valencia and so many things financed by German and also other contribution payers in the EEC. So we don't need that at all. So France must recognize the time is over that Germany is financing the great France nation and le grand nation, what they always saw, la grande nation. No, we have really to face our own problems here in Germany, and we have. For example, what are we doing with the pensioners? What we doing with infrastructure? What we are doing with the electricity and with energy markets here in Germany? What can we do? I told you with our army. Our army is the weakest, of course, and we can't defend ourselves. That's the sad situation here in Germany after 20 years. So we really must, I think, in this also it's interest of Great Britain and France that Germany will solve our problems, and we can't do that by such a common market financed with our money. We can't do that anymore, and we also can't finance France's dreams anymore. The French government must also try now to reduce the budget. That's my recommendation, but not financing financial welfare and social welfare with German taxpayers. That won't work anymore.
If France doesn't get it together, do you think that they could basically drag down the whole euro?
Yeah, I think so, because Italy is still a problem next year. A high amount of debts must be come back in the market by the Italian government, and a great number of them are in 0 or just 1% area, and a lot of debts from Italy will come on the market, and the same problem is with France, and they had now big trouble. I think 60 billion. Lack in the budget, and they discuss, and they still haven't a working government. I mean, Macron is isolated, and they have really a crisis in France. And now the German economy is tumbling, is not working well for the last 3 years, and everybody was used. Okay, if the other countries don't work, Germany will work as a machine, and Germany will then pay some billion more, and everything will go on. But this time, really, you can observe so many big companies are leaving Germany because of a lot of problems. I told you we have the highest energy prices, electricity prices in Europe, and France is really a big dangerous factor. But Italy is still like a sleeping volcano. And when both countries, the second and the third country of economy, I mean, we are the biggest, I think, then is France, and then we have on the third position already Italy. And all three countries, indeed, are now having severe problems. France more, bigger problems than Germany, of course. We are now in 70% in the budget deficit, but France in 116 up to 120. Italy by 140 roundabout. So you can see the problems. And of course, I'm waiting for the moment when the great hedge funds in the United States will analyze these problems. I think they still have analyzed this problem. And then we have the first speculation. And then Germany, like we did 15 years ago or 10 years ago, we can't stop the process anymore. Really, the process is then unstoppable. France, Italy, Germany can't help both countries.
Yeah. So we'll kick it along now to the big topic, especially in the UK. And I know that each country in Europe's having a little bit of a different approach to this. It's the issue of integrating Islam into our societies. Yeah. I think some countries have gone down more restrictive routes, things like banning the burqa. Other countries like the UK try to treat some Islamic practices as just as valid as those that we typically think of as ours historically.
Yes.
And I've just seen in the last week a country that you guys are very close with, Austria. A court ruled that Sharia law is valid in private contracts. I don't know if you heard that story. And I just wondered what the AfD's approach would be to Islam. Would there... Yeah, I'll leave the floor to you to answer that.
Yeah, I think we also would like to realize some details, like in France, when they say it in public sectors, in the public, the burqa or the niqab is forbidden. That's not. I want to see my counterpart. I want to see with whom I discuss or something like that. And as you also say, somebody today wouldn't have a sword anymore or an iron code or something like that. This time is over. We are living in the 21st century, not 200 years ago. And I think we have to face, and we have also try that these rules, our traditions will be fulfilled. And by the way, this is also again that they say, oh, you were something like dangerous to our constitution because you say, somebody can't wear a niqab or a burqa or something like that. It's highly discussed in school, for example. Some states say, okay, a teacher can wear a burqa or a something like that. Just a niqab is forbidden. And yeah, I would like to strengthen that because it's European culture, and we fought a long fight to get freedom and to have also a independent state from religious factors, also from the Catholic Church. So we have something like a process coming back to the Middle Ages, and I don't like that at all. So we criticize that very highly. Our position is that Islam isn't a part of the German culture. Also, this is highly criticized by the High Court and by the Secret Service. It's for them a reason to say, oh, we must forbid the party, we are dangerous, because we say no. In our opinion, the Islam isn't a dominating part of our history and our society. They also can, of course, trace and pursue their religion here when they accept our constitution and our laws, and that girls and boys have the same rights, and there are not different rights for girls and boys. And this is what we are talking about. I think it's normal in each country in the world to discuss that in Spain or in the United States or vice versa in Turkey. It's normal, but here in Germany, nothing is normal at all. Because of this, what I describe here and what is our strong opinion, we are observed and under suspicious observation, and some people say, okay, our party must be forbidden because of that. I mean, it's ridiculous, of course, but that's our clear position. We have a tradition here in Europe, a Christian and Jewish tradition in our society and our history. Of course, we have some influences, but I think all the constitutions, also the United States, are based on values we fought during the French Revolution and the process during the last 200 years. And that shouldn't be stopped, that can't be stopped, because democracy and this process is in a way linked, very tough. And now I see we are back to the 19th century, and I don't like that at all. My party not. I think the same tendencies I can observe in Great Britain. I'm sometimes really shocked when I hear what's going on in Great Britain, and I must stop that. I think we can be proud on our European tradition, and also I hear about so many discussions what we should shame for our colonies. We should also be responsible for so many things during the last 400, 500 years. I think it's time now again to say we can be proud on European history altogether. Great Britain, France, Germany, Italy. And we should be more encouraged, and we should encourage the people to be proud of our European role in the historic and the history of the world's history.
When you say you're shocked about When you say you're shocked about some of the stuff that you're hearing from Great Britain, what are you hearing and what's your reaction? Is that the country that you knew, or is it quite shocking to see what's happening here?
It's for me quite shocking. Last week in Cologne, I had talks with journalists from Great Britain, and it's for them, they described it like that. Also, not easy to describe what's really going on, to write about what's going on in special quarters of London or other districts in Great Britain, and that you aren't able to really criticize what's going on in some boroughs of the Islamic community. And they described it as a ban for journalists, that some things can't be said anymore, can't be written anymore. And for me, Great Britain always was the illuminating example for journalistic investigation, for journalism, for freedom of speech, the first democracy on earth. So what I observe and what I hear is it's a process also in your country back to times I thought we have left already. And it shocked me because you are, for me, the motherland of journalistic work, good journalism. Everybody is talking about the London Times and the Times with the respect, and there's a special vibe in when you speak about all these institutions in your country. Speaker's Corner, for example, was first place when I've been first time in London in '82. I was there. I think it's today maybe not possible anymore to say some things in Speaker's Corner or in the Hyde Park. So these tendencies are dangerous, and I think the left parties also promote and protect this process. Another aspect why we really should, as conservative and right parties, should stand together to stop this process of shrinking the freedom of speech. And I really hope both countries, my country too, will overcome this awful process.
And when you speak out so openly about the fact that you feel as though Islam is not really a part of the German constitution and some of the restrictions that you'd have, do you receive threats from Islamists? Do any AfD politicians fear speaking out like that? I had, 8 years ago, I talked about what's going on in Turkey and that they invade to Syria and fight against Kurdish people and all that stuff. And then I had also some threatenings about that. But right now, I think also a lot of walks of life here from also the first and second generation of people from Turkey coming to us think in the same way, because they are in the way like Atatürk and think, okay, we have the country with the laws, and on the other side there's church and the religious stuff. And both are independent, and what's going on in school, what's going on in broadcasting system, what's going on in the streets of our country belongs to politicians, not to the church anymore. Even the Catholic Church or the Protestants, and even, of course, I don't like to be advised by Islamic priests or something like that what girls can do, or not can do, or that they can't participate in sports, or can't participate in teaching swimming, or can't participate in other things in school. Same we have. We talked about niqab and burqa, and this should be, I think, for me, common sense, common compromise. And the old generation here is really thinking the same, but we have a process, and that's what we criticize, the so-called Islamic radicals, really try to establish another system here in Europe. And they want to establish another system. And that's what we say. The radical Islam isn't a part of Germany, of course, and really there we have to observe, and they should be maybe observed by our secret service, but not my party. So I think it's the same in Britain. It's the same, I think, in the suburbs of France, and we have some no-go areas already in France, also in Marseille, where you can't go anymore.
I heard about the same in Great Britain. There are some areas you can't walk alone anymore, and the police said, okay, maybe we shouldn't go. And in Berlin and also in my country, we have some districts, the police is just going with 2 or 3 cars inside, and if they are alone, they will wait for, and that's a description of a no-go area. And we have criminal structures here in Germany also. So we have to be very careful.
Yeah, and just to kind of finish us off, before we press record, you'd said about you had an affinity for Great Britain. So I just wanted to ask you a little bit about what that was, and also, how an AfD government would approach our country and what kind of relationship you'd want with us.
Yeah, since '82, I'm in your country, and I had very nice parents in Pill, Bournemouth. I always was used to live there in the summertime, and I really hope we can come again closer in contact. I would be happy when we cooperate, for example, in military things. Maybe if we are failing. Or will fail in a transforming and reforming process of the ODEC. Maybe also Great Britain would say with Germany, Netherlands, Denmark, we could maybe start a project together. And I think we have we should cooperate also in economical questions. That means working together in a trading union, working stronger together again on the financial sectors, financial market. It was a hard and harsh process for the financial institutions, also in Germany when Great Britain left the EEC. So I think there are a lot of things, and maybe we can also create a so-called common establish what do we think our both countries in the future will be important for Great Britain and Germany, and what are the foreign interests of both countries. And what I love is because Great Britain is always a good and close bridge to the United States, and we need that. And maybe Germany can be the other part of this bridge, to be a good bridge, and can come in linkage again with Russia. I think we need both. We need friendship, close friendship with the United States, and we of course need a normal neighborship with Russia, because I want to win them, and I think your companies too, as a market. They want European, also British and German products. I would like to have some raw materials and other products and goods from Russia being very important, oil, for example, or also when we talk about Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, that they should be repaired, and maybe we can also be delivered against.
I just want to pick up on what you said about being a bridge to Russia. In the UK, on the right, even, there's a very negative connotation with the image of Russia. Why is it that some of the Germans don't seem to have that feeling towards Russia? Why is it you have a more positive view, or maybe more pragmatic? I don't know.
Yeah, I think first of all, they allowed finally the reunion of Germany, eastern part and the western part of Germany. And we had a good process during the 90s and also in the beginning of the new decade. But I think it was a mistake of the old government and administration of the United States not to let Russia completely in. They are not a part being accepted by a lot of people after. I think Gorbachev failed in the middle of the 90s. So I think we also had a big chance in that time to bring Russia nearer to us. They also thought about being a member of the NATO. And I think today when we see what happened, and we have China as a big player, also India will become a big player in the next step. So that's why the United States think we must seek and We must concentrate on the Pacific area. And also very well analyzed by Donald Trump to say Europe and the European people and the European nations must face and must regulate and must control their own process here in Europe and must be able to defend themselves. And of course, we need then Russia. Russia is always a dominating part and an important part during the last 500 years. And will be for the next 500 years a very important part. So a lot of raw materials are in Russia. I'd like to have them, not giving them on pushing Russia to China. And I think of course, because of our situation in Germany, had always a closer relationship to Russia, of course, not only because of our eastern parts being controlled for more than 40 years by the Soviet Union. We also had in the former kings were had been relatives to our German families here and kings, especially from Prussia. So there are strong links, and I think the best times when we look back for Russia and Germany had always been when Germany and Russia cooperated. It wasn't so. France didn't like that, because if this cooperation is working, German economy in Germany is growing up, of course, and if you don't have a conflict with Russia. So in the new world, with a lot of big countries, United States, I mentioned China, India, and I also hope Europe will come back in a role being an accepted partner. And there we need cooperation. And I think it's the best thing could happen if we have good contacts with our biggest neighbor, and our biggest neighbor is here in Europe, Russia. And trade with Russia would be good for everybody. And that's why I think it's so important. And we have, of course, a nearer and closer role than Great Britain. Great Britain in the history has other interests by the Commonwealth and by the colonies and all that. And it's also, as I mentioned that, a bridge to the United States always. And both of us, when we have a combination of both, and a strong and good cooperation between Great Britain, could be very successful for Europe. And maybe France can join this process. I think a lot of other countries would join this process. I mentioned Austria, I think Italy. A lot of big countries would join this process, and a leading role was also then perfect for Great Britain in this process. And maybe you can then have really good co-workers again from the continent with the same traditional and cultural background we discussed here.
Oh, interesting perspective. Well, thank you so much for your time. We've learned a lot about the AfD and what you want to do, and I think that's good because it doesn't always get the representation in the British media. So thank you so much for coming on.